In music, I've noticed there's an underlying tendency to label a particular group with a scarlet letter. Lol, not A, you frickin' nerd. What, you finished the book in AP English and everything? It didn't spark note it like a true alpha like me would have back in the day? Me, captain of the varsity clarinet section? Me, president of the film club, top of his class? No joke? Cheat the system? Get all the A's? No, the letter in this case is actually a B, for basic. As in basic white bitch. Nice common phrase that people like to use, or in this case, it's basic white band. Oh, basic white band, oh my god, that's the title! We all know what I'm talking about. Much as popular opinion sways with the tide of cultural discussion, 21 Pilots, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Imagine Dragons, Nickelback, Train, Chainsmokers, Florida Georgia Line, AC/DC, Kiss, Led Zeppelin, The Rolling Stones, The Beatles. But Dylan, I hear you say, that's a really broad cluster of bands you just named. What's the common trait between them? Well, besides the obvious white in the basic white band lineage.
A musical pastiche for a white guy sulking in his high-rise apartment that he rented in a freshly gentrified neighborhood.
Dog, I just want to know if you want eggs or not. The most interesting part for me lies in the basic part, which is some kind of contradiction. Anyway, people who like different things can get elitist and full of themselves for different reasons, especially in discussing the arts. And for one reason or another, every one of these acts that I've named could feasibly yield a reaction to the effect of, oh, you like them. We all have that one band that at least a part of ourselves feels somewhat guilty for liking, be it for critical reaction or simply how obvious it would be that we enjoy it. Enter me! It's kind of hard to nail down your basic white band when your own musical taste earns you the title of neo-boomer. Roll it. The majority of the guys that I put on this thing are either obscure, ancient, or dead. This is just me saying you are what you are, and I'm a fucking granddad. And as much as I've made progress on contemporary preferences with R&B, rock, or electro, I've had yet to come across that one group that makes me feel like a hipster equivalent of a good old boy stomping his feet at a Skynyrd show. That was until I found Dr. Dog.
This is a band that we love. Dr. Dog back in the studios.
And it's always such a pleasure to see this long-running, such a talented band.
The first time I listened to a Dr. Dog track, it was at work. I work in a music venue, and we play Spotify playlists that fill the place with noise between performances. Right away, I really liked it. It felt old and new at the same time, like everything else I end up liking. And I came to find out that it was largely because their primary influences were the same folk rock and psychedelic pop bands that I had been in love with for years already. Gave myself the hiccups. And yet the more I dug into the group's history, the more I read Pitchfork's reviews, the more it occurred to me how polarizing the group was. And it seemed like you could sum most of it up in one sentiment: average white band. If it's at all possible to try to be fair to white guys for a second, if you're white and want to get into music, whether you're performing it or listening to it, you're kind of doubly fucked. I mean, if you try to adapt to musical trends of the present day, which pretty damn frequently are innovated by, minorities of some kind, you somewhat justifiably get called out for being a white dude performing their music.
Oh, daddy, daddy, I beg you. Surfing USA.
Whereas if you play it safe and pay homage to an old pop group from the 60s or 70s, you get called out as white people playing white music.
The National chose their name because it was benign and meaningless. According to an interview with frontman Matt in the Scene Star, this is apparently also the guiding principle behind their music. You can catch a band that sounds a lot like The National any Friday night, doing open mics in coffee shops in affluent suburbs from sea to shining sea. As if their adult album alternative radio sound weren't the most white bread thing since the death of Liberace. They also play benefits for Tibet with Vampire Weekend. Someone get these guys venti cups of Starbucks and get it over with.
That's what these terms are. These terms are weapons that the left use to shut down discussion. There can never be anything that's too far left to be printed in the Irish Times. It's always right discussion.
Bro, you look like Shia LaBeouf going full method for the Gavin McInnes biopic. Sit your ass down, please.
Now, obviously, I know it's more complicated than that. Racial relations in popular music is way too complicated and touchy to sum up in this particular video, so I'll leave it at that. It's just something that I've noticed and think is at least somewhat whack. Like, what are they supposed to do then? Play bluegrass and nothing else? Or like English folk music? Or, ooh, I know, country. The most renowned and dignified white people music. Harvest corn, drive a truck, drink my beer, fuck my dad. Let's get back to Dr. Dog, though. If I had to describe their sound, it's clearly a pastiche, an attempt to replicate the essence of a musical past, while at least trying to put your own spin on things. B for basic white band? Oh, silly me. It was actually B for Beatles and Beach Boys and the band. Yeah, 3 of the most acclaimed bands of their time and 3 of my favorite bands from that time. Sounds like a real buzzkill. But even if it's easy to reverse engineer the primary influences for this particular band, in my time listening to them, I've not only found this synthesis of noises to be appealing to me, but at the very least fresh enough to justify its own existence. To my ears, it's not so close to any of these individual bands that it gets distracting in any way. Call me an old soul, call me a simp who's whipped and easily manipulated by what Father John Misty calls false authenticity.
Aesthetic authenticity is, it's like hunting for shadows with a flashlight, because the closer you get to making something sound exactly like it did in the 60s or 70s, then the authenticity kind of decreases.
At the end of the day, I like what I like, and you like what you like. The canon of popular music is understandably frustrating because there's this tendency to over-glorify the same things over and over again. Much like hyping an older movie to an unbelievably high status, paying constant respects to a decades-old sound can seem like a slight against more progressive artists. Kinda like how some high schoolers coming in and saying, "If you think about it, classic rock isn't really all that good," before putting on the latest Death Grips album might seem annoying to anyone who knows how trends work. Again, another topic for another time. If I had to chalk up one major complaint with Dr. Dog, it's that they've relied too heavily on this particular sound, at least for too many consecutive albums in a row. Their last album from 2018, they did try to change things up a little bit of a sprier sound, not quite as boppy, jammy, and happy-go-lucky as their previous work might have been, a little bit darker. Ultimately, though, it wasn't nearly different enough, I'll admit. For me, though, Dr. Dog represents the best that this old soul rock has to offer, because I legitimately do feel some freshness in the synthesis of its parts, a Dr. Dog sound, similar to how I think Steven Wilson has his own modern spin on classic prog sounds, or how the Strokes carry a clear trajectory of punk and harder rock. Then you have Greta Van Fleet, who, as anyone will tell you, is just Led Zeppelin. Like, that's it, just Led Zeppelin. For my money, more than capable performers. I've seen them live at my venue. They're a rock-solid band. They can bring the house down. They're very talented musicians, but they offer next to nothing new, to like an insulting degree, and they've continued to just stick to this sound, which they claim is influenced by Guns N' Roses, or like Van Halen or some shit. I mean, like, on one hand, it's nice to have a new band that isn't just emo or indie boys in beanies. On the other, it's just Led Zeppelin. Quit being Led Zeppelin. So, bottom line, Dr. Dog, I like them. Some of you probably hear that and think, well, of course he does. He has a shirt of the band. He has a Beatles coffee cup. And every time we talk about anything musical, he never shuts up about Brian Wilson. So of course he likes that. So one more time for the kids in the back. Here are the 4 B's of Dr. Dog. Beatles, Beach Boys, band, and finally, Bob. But not that Bob, that Bob. Why that Bob? Well, because in a lot of ways, without Bob, you don't have band. They were his backing band before they went by the Hawks, and then they went off and did their own thing. But who is this Bob? I'll tell y'all a little later. I like that Bob too. All right, I'm done. Be sure to subscribe if this did anything for you. Thank you for watching. I will see you again soon.